Hello, everyone. This is Angelina. Welcome to the live stream. February the 4th, Beijing time is Lichun, the start of spring in the Chinese calendar. Traditionally, this day symbolizes the revival of all living things. There is an old Chinese saying, a year's plan begins in spring, and Lichun represents the beginning of a new year. That means that after Lichun, the year 2026, the Bingwu year officially begins. And this is the year people often refer to as the Red Horse Year. The Bingwu Red Horse Year is destined to be extraordinary. And it also carries a worrisome name in folklore, the so called Red Horse Calamity. And on precisely this significant day, both Chinese Communist Party media and the Russian media reported major news. Xi Jinping held a video call with Vladimir Putin at the Great Hall of the People. She told Putin, today happens to be Lichun, the start of spring in the Chinese lunar calendar. It symbolizes the return of spring and represents a new beginning. I am waiting to work with President Putin on this day filled with positive meaning to jointly chart a new blueprint for China Russia relations. But is this really good news of spring for the Chinese people? If we strip away the sugarcoating of seasonal symbolism, what we actually see are two dictators mired in diplomatic isolation and economic bottlenecks, preparing to huddle together for warmth in the dead of winter and make a desperate last ditch stand. Why choose Lichun for a video call? And why deliberately stage it at the Great Hall of the People? The footage shows CCP Foreign Minister Wang Yi and Minister of Commerce Wang Wentao, among others, participating in the video meeting. The CCP is most adept at using cultural symbols as the backdrop for displays of power. Choosing Lichun, a traditional Chinese solar term, and broadcasting it so prominently is meant to create a domestic illusion that Xi Jinping's power is stable and that everything is under control. Despite foreign media reports about instability within China's military and the speculation that Russia might pivot toward the United States, the message being sent is that Putin remains Xi Jinping's good brother and close partner. She believes he can dominate China, just as Putin believes he can dominate Russia. Both dictators like to emphasize their personal friendship in diplomatic settings, what they call leader to leader diplomacy. But in reality, the double headed ego, that is Russia, has never been a reliable partner. In the eyes of most Chinese people, Russia is an aggressor. Russia's modern and contemporary history of invading China and massacring Chinese people has not been forgotten. It was the CCP, in the name of so-called strategic alliance, that handed over more than 1.5 million square meters of Chinese territory to Russia. Vladivostok, once Chinese land known as Haishengwei, has now become what Putin calls a Russian fortress. Xi Jinping has gone against the will of the world to fully support Russia and proclaiming a so-called no limits strategic partnership and backing Russia's invasion of Ukraine. We must ask, has this no limits partnership actually made life better for ordinary Chinese people? By binding himself to Putin, Xi Jinping has driven the CCP's credibility on the international stage down to freezing point. And Western countries have made it clear that whether this war ends or not largely depends on Xi Jinping. Mr. Guo Wengui said this a long time ago. From day one, the Russian-Ukraine war was planned by Xi Jinping and Vladimir Putin together. Xi supports Putin's war, but in doing so, he has destroyed the economies of Ukraine, Russia, and China itself, and ruined countless lives of young people. And that is why Mr. Gore also said that in service of Russian public opinion, the person Russians hate the most is Putin, and the second most hated is Xi Jinping. So both Putin and Xi are driven by the same goal, preserving their own dictatorial rule. They have gambled everything and taken their own people's hostage. And Xi Jinping's strategic choice has effectively forced China's development train off the tracks of modern civilization and free trade, and diverted it toward the axis of authoritarianism. As a result, the CCP's China is being pushed into a future of internal circulation, quote, under sanctions and isolation. Let's continue to look at what Xi Jinping and Putin said during the video call, okay? Xi stated that both sides should seize the historical opportunity, maintain close high-level exchanges, and strengthen practical cooperation across all fields. And through deeper strategic coordination and a more proactive sense of responsibility as major powers, ensure that China-Russia relations continue to develop along the right track. What exactly is this right track? Publicly, Xi and Putin claim they are not forming an alliances. Yet, in military exercises, energy trades, and diplomatic backing, their cooperation runs much deeper than that of many formal treaty allies. That's a fact. Xi needs Putin's political endorsement, and the CCP needs Russia's energy and strategic rear base. And Russia needs China's economic support. Put plainly, Putin needs China to keep transfusing blood into his system. So Xi Jinping also said that since the beginning of the year, the international situation has become increasingly turbulent, and that China and Russia must firmly safeguard the outcomes of World War II resolutely uphold the international system with the United Nations at its core and defended the basic principles of international law. But what exactly are the outcomes of World War II? For China, the end of World War II brought an even deeper disaster and nightmare. That is the CCP's seizure of the state power. What Xi truly wants to protect is the CCP's claim to being the legitimate government of China. But is that really how the world works? Could a country governed by the rule of law support simply because of a so-called no-limits relationship between leaders, a war of aggression that is condemned by the civilized world? Obviously not. This is yet another example of Xi deliberately confusing and misleading the public. Lichun supposedly should symbolize openness and hope. But under the current Russia strategy, what we see looks more like an omen of renewed isolation. This no limits partnership is not about the well being of the Chinese people. It is about safeguarding the personal dictatorships of Xi Jinping and Vladimir Putin. Another point worth noting is the timing. Xi and Putin choose to speak on February the 4th, Lichun, just as the PLA Daily had been publishing articles for 4 consecutive days criticizing Zhang Youxia and Liu Zhenli, calling for shedding feathers and being reborn. What does that mean? Stripping Zhang Youxiang and Liu Zhenli of all their followers to usher in the rebirth of Xi's personal supremacy? Through this call, Xi was also signaling to all the restless forces at home that he still holds the winning hand. Even after taking down Zhang Youxia and Liu Zhenli, Putin still stands firmly behind Xi Jinping. Well, that's the illusion he wants to put it out. As for Putin, he has his own calculations. With Russia about to enter a new round of talks with Ukraine in Abu Dhabi, the Xi-Putin call, though it did not mention Ukraine, was also a message to the West. Xi Jinping is Russia's backing, and Russia is not afraid of sanctions. On the same day, Russian Defense Minister Andriy Belosov announced that the Russian military received more than 10,000 pieces of weaponry in January alone, and that about 2 million weapons are expected to be delivered by 2026. The Russian Ministry of Defense has already arranged work to sign contracts for equipment with long production cycles to ensure delivery schedules through 2027. The defense minister also set tasks to ensure uninterrupted production and supply of scarce weapons, military equipment, and special equipment. The signal could not be clearer. Xi is reassuring Putin. When combined with Shoigu's sudden visit to China on February the 1st, when he met with Wang Yi and confirmed that China would continue supporting Russia, downplaying the impact of the Zhang Yuxia and Liu Zhenli events, and reaffirming continued trade and economic support. It is clear that everything is meant to move forward as planned before. But given China's current political and economic status quo, can it really support Russia without consequences? That's a big question, needs to be answered. Right after ending his video call with Putin, Xi Jinping also spoke by phone with President Trump. You reading through Xi's official readout and President Trump's statement, just like any other previous calls, the contrast is striking. President Trump was very direct, listing concrete items such as 20 million tons of soybeans, aircraft engines, oil, and natural gas. In Trump's eyes, Xi is a big buyer. As the president of the United States, Trump is always happy to clearly spell out what benefits the American people. And by contrast, Xi's readout made no mention of these trade measures at all. Instead, it emphasized the Taiwan issue and promoted a narrative of mutual respect and so-called great power leadership between Xi and Trump. This narrative is designed to preserve Xi's dictatorial pride and mask his enormous concessions. As Mr. Gore said in his January 28 phone call, after the Zhang and Liu incidents, Xi has become a frightened bird. While arresting many people, he's also creating the illusion that everything is peaceful, downplaying the impact of these events externally. He's using the prospect of Trump's visit to China to fabricate an image of friendly Sino-US relations and needing, if necessary, to agree to enormous US conditions just to close a deal, while simultaneously clinging to Putin. She is following Mr. Miles Gore's script step by step. Lichun signals the arrival of the Red Horse calamity, and for Xi Jinping, this is truly the beginning of a turning point. Mr. Gore has also stated clearly that before the Zhang Yuxia incident, President Trump did not fully understand the real situation of the CCP and still had some reservations. But the Zhang Yuxiang incident allowed Trump to see the CCP's fundamental weakness, completely changing his view of it. And Trump believes in strength. And with the CCP being this weak, he will go after it relentlessly. Trump will spare no cost to draw Putin over to the US side against the CCP and lifting sanctions and unfreezing funds. And Putin will inevitably abandon the CCP and pivot toward the United States. The US will certainly destroy the evil Iranian regime. Once Iran and Cuba change regimes, the CCP will hit even harder. And the United States will definitely strike the CCP with full force. A global automatic dismantling of the CCP through coordinated international action is becoming unstoppable. double-headed eagle, Russia, Europe, and the United States and others will ultimately stand with us, the new federal state of China, on the front line to take down the CCP. And 2026 will be the best opportunity to do so. That's all for today. And leave your thoughts and comments in the comment section and let me know. Have a great day.